Hawk on the outside. Oh, my!
And the Wolfpack trying to pull another one out. Derek Wittenberg. This is outside. Thurl Bailey rebounds. Bailey again. It's good, and a timeout called. NC State leads. Timeout.
63. Braddock outside the three-point range. Lost the ball. Gannon to Lowe.
Lord, you know that I'm your child.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to this 10th edition of Somehow We Manage. I'm Caegan Jackson, and I'm joined, as always, by my friendly neighborhood co-host, Mr. Spenser Hargrove. Spence, how's it going, buddy?
It's going good. 10 episodes in, and we haven't killed each other quite yet. So yeah. I'd say things are rolling good.
This is an anniversary for us.
That's right.
We need to celebrate. I need to go back down to 2-5 and celebrate.
Come on down.
Hey, well, listen, for the 10th episode, we got to have a special guest, right?
That's right.
I think we've got one today. So our guest today, he's former NBA player, public speaker, basketball analyst, singer-songwriter, actor, and he's most notably a member of the 1983 national championship team at NC State, at least in my mind. So let's welcome on Mr. Thurl Big T Bailey. Thurl, how's it going?
Doing good. You must have Googled me right before this.
No. We do our research. We do our research.
I'm going to wait, though, till Spenser. Spenser, you can go to the other room and put on that red shirt that I know you have.
Okay. I got a Hurricane shirt. Will that work? I got a Carolina Hurricanes.
No, that's not going to work. Hey, it's good to be with you guys.
Yeah. We're appreciative of you coming on. So I'll start because I've thought about this a million times, and I want to ask you: does a day ever go by that you don't have to talk about it, that someone doesn't ask you about it? Does a day ever go by?
Not really.
So it's always there.
If it's close to going by, I'm going to bring it up to somebody.
Really?
Right? Yeah, it's that special, and it still is. We're creeping up on the 40th anniversary this coming season. So yeah, when you're still talking about it after 40 years, when people are still bringing it up, then you know it was something special.
So do you ever get tired of it?
No.
Never?
No, never. Why would you get tired of a story like that? I mean, that's a story for the ages. And so it never gets old. Never get tired of answering questions about it, being on podcasts about it, talking to the guys, in a group text with the team about it. And so, yeah, we get old, but that story doesn't.
So you guys still keep in touch?
Oh, for sure.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a given. And everybody has something going on in their personal lives, but we always find time to try to get together in person. I know with the 40th anniversary coming up, there'll be some things where we can see each other in person, but we try to do something virtual with technology where it is. And we try to text each other if something happens in each of our lives or birthday pops up. We're mindful of the guys who are still with us and the guys who aren't with us.
Well, here's another question I've always been dying to ask. Somebody from that team. Does it bother you that it's now marketed? Because they talk about it year after year. Every time March comes around, you see Coach V running on the floor and all that. It's taught about so much, but it's always brought up as this miracle run, right? Does that bother you? Because what most people don't know or maybe don't remember is that you guys had a really good team.
Yeah, we had a good team, but nobody really knew that till the end.
Right.
There were that particular season that we won it. When you look at our schedule, there were some amazing. ACC was top of the heap. Virginia, Carolina, especially those two were the powerhouses of the ACC. And some of the other teams we played, out of the conference pretty much got us prepared night after night or game after game to hopefully get better and ultimately play the best basketball we were playing postseason, post regular season. So no, I don't think Cinderella is misused at all. I mean, it was a Cinderella type story in itself, with not just that year, but starting sometime before that, with Coach Norm Sloan coming in and then leaving after freshman year. So, that's like, Cinderella not getting invited to the ball. That's something that, we were sad about. And to go from that point to the ultimate goal, the ending, there aren't many stories written like that, right? I mean, there just aren't. And just for ours to be categorized as that is a special thing.
So if Derek Wittenberg doesn't go down on Othell Wilson's foot in the left corner over there, how different is the story, do you think?
With hindsight being what it is, we probably would not have seen a lot of things happen. Ernie Myers may not have been given a chance to prove how good he was. Lorenzo Charles may not have grown up on the court before our eyes like he did. So the scenario may have been different. You never really know, but that's a great chapter in the story, though, isn't it? I mean, to have one of your best players go down, because you can't have that. I speak about this all the time, about the journey and the pit moments in our lives. The pit moment is exactly what it is. It's the deepest part of what we've gone through, the failures. And so you can't, the success part is not as glamorous or glorious without those pit moments, like Derek going down, right? And so even Coach B's legacy, in a sense, with what he did and what he had to go through with a body riddled with cancer, what he created from that. It's just, the story is way beyond the basketball court. But you're right. I mean, without Derek going down, who knows what the story would have ended up being. But we would not have had some of the stories that came out of that if that moment hadn't transpired.
So we'll take just a little step back. Spence, we'll stop talking about this NC State stuff for you. But I want to go back to the beginning. So talk to me about growing up in the DC area and, coming up as a ball player in that area of the country.
Well, it took my parents sacrificing everything to actually move north to the DC, Maryland area. They worked in hot tobacco fields for white sharecroppers for very little money. And they had a couple of kids, and they knew that if they were going to try to make it better for their kids, that they needed something more. They couldn't survive on what they were doing. And like most Blacks in that era and time, it was a struggle. It was a struggle socially. It was a struggle, financially, to try to find ways to provide for your family. And it was even a bigger risk for them to say, well, we got to do something, we got to move, not knowing what was ahead of them. So that's how far I always go back, because if not for them leaving that area, my mom was in tow with another kid when they left, and that was me. So I was born in the DC area. They had family up there. My dad's family were there. So my parents found odd jobs, and I grew up in the DC, Maryland, the Prince George's County area. And interestingly enough, Prince George's County has become one of the hotbeds for future NBA players. Probably per capita has produced more NBA players in any other county.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was where I grew up. And as I got older and understood where I was, and meaning where I was personally with my own self. Like, I didn't have basketball until I was an early teenager. I'd never even been interested in it. I knew that my education was going to be, my parents always hammered home that if you're going to be successful, you're Black and you're living in a very, I guess, intense time of your life with civil rights going on. But if you're going to make it, we're going to try to provide as best we can, but your education is going to get you where you need to go. So that was stress. Education, number one. I couldn't come home with C's or below. My mom always said C's average, and I don't raise average kids. So in my mind, I was going to grow up to be a great communicator, a great, get a great education and go out and, get into politics or be a doctor or whatever. Sports hadn't even entered my mind until I was about 12. And I watched my first basketball game on TV with my dad and saw some great athletes running around with short shorts and tank tops. And I picked one guy out of the group because I knew he was probably the best player on the court, and it happened to be a guy named Dr. J. And that's when I fell in love with basketball. I wanted to be like him. And that's kind of when my basketball journey started. I had never played before, so my dad made me a makeshift basket outside and began to teach me certain things about ball and taught me a little bit. And went to junior high school, tried out for my 7th grade team at 6'5", got cut. Tried out the next year at 6'7", got cut. Coach told me not to come back. And he said he didn't have time to teach me how to play. He was looking for guys who already knew. And so I was going to be Dr. J regardless, even if it was going to be in the confines of my own front yard, because I'd be out there practicing his moves before the sun went down. And my last year junior high at 6'9", that coach that cut me twice took another job. Another coach came in. I tried out. I was horrible. I mean, I wasn't the worst guy trying out of 50 guys. I was next to the worst. But he kept me and pulled me into his office and changed my life that day. He looked at me and he said, if you want to be a good player, you have a lot of work to do, but I'll come in 1 hour before. I'll work with you during practice, and I'll stay 1 hour after. And I wonder why he chose to sacrifice his time for me. And he told me, he said, I see potential in you. And so that's what changed my life. I found a guy who saw something in me, and he made me see it. I fell in love with basketball. I wanted to be like Dr. J, and that's how I got a scholarship to North Carolina State University.
Caegan, I'm gonna ask a question now. So you talked about you committed to NC State. What made you decide that Raleigh was the best place for you?
Well, my folks grew up in Rocky Mount,
Oh.
so they knew North Carolina like the back of their hand. And back in the day, recruiting was different than today, right? Somewhat different, where the coach, there's some schools that don't really have to recruit, like the one with the color of your shirt on, the shirt you have on, because they've established themselves as, great powerhouses. But back in the day, the coach would come to your house and sit down with your family, and who would basically decide where the kid was going. You talk to mama, and mama was going to decide. Mama was going to, not necessarily pick for you, but she was going to be the gauntlet, if you will, the interviewer of the coach. Cook him a good meal. So Norm Sloan sits down, and my mom asked all the questions. And first question was, Coach, if he comes to your school, you're going to make sure he gets a great education, right? Because that's primary. That's paramount for why he would be coming. Basketball wouldn't be his priority, although I know that the basketball scholarship's getting him there. Coach would say, yeah, yeah, Miss Bailey. And my mom would always say, don't make me come down there, right? And so the coaches would always respect that, especially from my mom. But after it was all said and done, I wasn't recruited by a lot of schools, all local, Maryland, Georgetown, and North Carolina State and Davidson. And so instead of staying in my own backyard, we liked NC State, we liked Norm Sloan and what he brought to the table. And that's what took me to Raleigh. Unbeknownst to me, two other guys from the area had decided to go there as well. I didn't know that till I got to NC State, that Derek and Sidney had signed as well.
Did Norm Sloan wear the checkered sport coat in your house when he came to recruit you?
Absolutely, he did. I don't know if he took that thing off.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
He always wore it. Yeah, he always wore it, and it was a staple of who he was and what he represented. And I remember some checkered jackets at Carolina as well. So it was in style back then.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of like the plaid, the checkered sport coat. I wish they would bring that back. I will say one thing about Roy Williams that I like is he always rocked like the old school, plaid, and he had all the ugly sport coats. But I'm a fan. I like it. But
I think it should come back. The short shorts are trying to make a comeback as well. So we'll see if the plaid jackets do.
Let me ask you this. You said earlier that, Dr. J was your guy. Like that was your idol. Have you ever heard the story? I think it was either on David Letterman or Johnny Carson. I don't know, but Coach V made an appearance. Have you heard the story about when I don't know if he was recruiting him, but somebody was saying, you got to check out this kid. Then he was still Julius Erving, but he saw him play, whatever. And he was like, no, he can't, he'll never make it at our level. Blah, blah, blah. He can't play, too short, not athletic enough, whatever. And he was like, you know what that kid's name was? Julius Erving. The whole crowd, how great of a storyteller he was. But I don't know if you'd ever heard that before. I always got a kick out of that.
I had.
Yeah.
I had heard it.
My brother Nick told me about a kid in Long Island, Roosevelt High School. Said he's a great player. My first year in the business, and he said, come and see it. I saw him. I said, can't make it. Can't play. 6'3", no good. My brother said, he's a pretty good player. I said, can't make it. So I took a kid instead of this kid, name of Alan Kotler, a very big name in basketball today, Alan Kotler. The kid I didn't take was a fellow named Julius Erving.
No.
Yes.
Are you kidding?
Not a bad play.
And you're still in business?
I'm still in this business and trying to do
Jim,
shows like this if I can.
I could have picked Julius Erving.
I actually interviewed Dr. J on my podcast.
Really?
Called Thurl Talk. Yeah, because he was my idol, and I figured, it'd be great to get my idol on the podcast. And I had golfed with Dr. J years after playing, and I got a chance to tell him, because I came full circle with Dr. J. He was the guy that got me excited about basketball. And then when I was drafted by the Utah Jazz, 7th pick in the first round, I had one of my first games in Salt Lake City was against the 76ers. And I get out there on the floor as a young rookie, scared and nervous about, just about being out there at that level. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's Dr. J. He reaches his hand out, shakes my hand, and I still think that's the greatest moment of my NBA career. And I scored a lot of points, played against a lot of guys, but to be able to stand there with, right beside the guy who you idolized and grew up with is something that a lot of players don't get to experience. Now, I had to guard him that night, and I wanted my shot. I wanted my shot at Dr. J, and I held Dr. J. I held him to 47 points. There was no way he was going to score 50 on me that night, fellas.
Yeah, you showed him, right? So when you make it to that point, when you finally make it to the NBA, do you ever find yourself fanboying, or especially, like meeting Dr. J, do you ever say like, oh, well, there's so-and-so, or there's coach, whoever, did you ever find yourself there, or did it not matter to you at that point?
Oh yeah, it always matters. I mean, that's a new term that you young people use. We idolized guys that paved the way for us. And those guys in the beginning didn't make a lot of money. Some of them had to have jobs on the side. So they paved the way in a lot of ways, especially when you talk about a Black kid. And at one point where, from college to the league, there was segregation involved. So you look at some of the greats like Oscar Robertson, who paved the way for a lot of people to play, and even guys before him. So yeah, I mean, it's always great to know the history, and that's something I get a little bit disappointed in with kind of the new eras. A lot of these guys, they don't know about some of these older guys. They know the Bill Russells, God rest his soul, but they don't know some of the journeys that a lot of these guys went through for the league to look like and feel like what it is today.
Spencer, did you have a question? I felt like I cut you off there for a second.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm used to it with you. So you talked about how you battled with Dr. J, but I'm gonna go back to your college days a little bit. You played against some great players in college as well. But what can you remember most about battling with, Ralph Sampson, James Worthy, playing against Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan wasn't Michael Jordan in college as he was professionally, but just what can you say about battling against Ralph Sampson and James Worthy down low? There had to be some very intense battles.
I remember every battle. I remember everything. And the reason I remember is because we created rivalries. We stayed at least 3 years in college, and we developed those rivalries, and I would say the respect for each other and friendships. I still talk to a lot of those guys today. Spoke to James Worthy a few months ago. I'm on the board of the NBA Retired Players Association with Sam Perkins. And so it was special. Those were special battles. Matter of fact, I watched the ACC tournament game we won that year against Carolina, where Sam Perkins almost beat us with a 3 in regulation, and Michael Jordan fouled out. But those were amazing battles with guys who would go on, obviously, to be great NBA players and legends, and Hall of Famers. So, those are conversations that you love bringing up, and you love sitting down with those guys when you get a chance to see them and talking about bringing up certain games, because we never won a game at Carolina. It was just hard to win there. So difficult to win in that place. And we never beat Virginia really until, post an ACC tournament. And then after that, they always had powerhouse teams. So those guys they're the guys that really lifted the competition level, right? If you were going to win anything, you had to beat those guys. You had to show that, and that was almost job security most time for coaches, right? If you're a state and you beat Carolina, you don't win a lot of other games. You beat Carolina, you get to sign on for a few more years. So just that's when the ACC was at its best.
Yeah, talking about the great players and the greatness of the ACC, especially in that era, what was your view of NC State and the ACC as a whole coming into college? Like, I mean, you're a guy from DC. I mean, you hear people talk about, they say, oh, the ACC was just kind of this mythical thing, on the other end of the country or whatever. So for you personally, what was your view of NC State and the ACC as a whole?
Well, I didn't know a lot about the conference, as a young player that hadn't been playing for a long time. I don't think I did this deep dive. Of course, we didn't have the internet or anything like that, about the conference itself. It was more about the particular school where I felt like I would fit in and contribute as a student athlete. It was more about what I felt like I would be doing after 4 years of a college education. And the basketball was kind of the whipped cream, right? You know, you get to, hopefully you were good enough to get a lot of minutes to play. I mean, I couldn't foresee my future, but, you know, I wanted to play a lot in college. So when I went my freshman year, and Hawkeye Whitney and Clyde Austin, and, you know, some of the other guys were there before me. I didn't see a lot of time, but I was hopeful that if I worked hard enough that I could, you know, earn those minutes and become a big part of what we did as a team. I didn't really have any NBA dreams in my mind at that time because I wasn't that great of a player. But once I got there though, and I studied up on the teams, I saw the schedule, I knew we were going to be playing, and I did my research on the players. I mean, I don't think there was a better conference in the country that really stacked up to where the ACC. I mean, there were great schools. Don't get me wrong. There were some great schools and conferences, but being entrenched in that, in the ACC with 3 great schools, Duke was just up and coming. They had some success before I got there, but with all those schools being so close together and so competitive, you know, we definitely give, you know, the Big Ten a run, and even other conferences. So yeah, I definitely knew that the ACC was a powerhouse once I got there.
Okay, so, you know, obviously you started NC State, and Coach Sloan, you know, Stormin' Norman is, you know, who recruited you. But obviously, you know, Coach Sloan leaves for Florida. You know, that's kind of part of your story of that team, and Coach Valvano comes in. You know, you guys weren't really crazy about him at first. I know, you know, a lot of the other coaches in the ACC weren't either. So how did that relationship, you know, how did it eventually flourish and you all become as close as you did?
You can't be crazy about somebody you don't know anything about, right? I mean, it wasn't a love at first sight meeting, just because of where we were emotionally with Coach Sloan leaving. We were kind of confused, right? Some guys didn't know what to do. Some maybe thought about following Coach Sloan to Florida. I was going home. I called my mom and said, "Mom, Coach Sloan's going to Florida. I'm coming home." And my mom quoted, she said, "Son, you may be going somewhere, but you're not coming here." And so she said, "You're going to stay, get your education. That's what you went there for. And you're going to be patient. Listen to whoever the new guy is when they bring him in. You may end up liking him. If you don't, then you can decide what to do. But you're not coming home." So my mom blew that all to pieces. And so we waited. And if you had walked into that room before Coach V walked in, you would have read our body language with arms crossed, head down, feet straight out, because we really weren't trying to hear it, right? I mean, we didn't owe this man anything. He didn't owe us anything. He was a new guy coming in, didn't recruit any of us. Kind of on our minds, this guy walking in, and he was confident he was going to win one, and he just proceeded to sell it. He proceeded was to try to keep all of us there. And that was our first day with him. He didn't beat around the bush. He laid it out for us and gave us an opportunity to choose whether we wanted to be a part of what he was trying to create.
Do you think that if things had worked out different for Coach V, you know, obviously as a coach, but, you know, if he hadn't have, you know, gotten sick, do you think that he would have still coached, because, you know, he was involved in so many different things, and B, do you think he would have flourished in today's college basketball?
Well, I mean, that's all opinion though, isn't it? I mean, you know, we look at what the V Foundation has done and how many people that has helped. And so, you know, who knows, other than the man upstairs, what that destiny ends up being. But I know while we had him here on this earth, he changed a lot of lives, changed my life. I mean, I'm not the guy I am today. I'm not totally the guy I am today without having Coach B in my life. Now, I still may be a great person, but a lot of the things I teach today are based on what I learned from him, based on what I learned from that journey. So I don't think there's any question that Coach B loved coaching, and he would have continued that as long as he possibly could. But that's not what he was destined to do. He was destined to be in that room with us. He had to make a choice, right? We all had to. I didn't have to be there. I could have decided to go somewhere else. But because I chose to stay with that team, I got to experience everything that came with that. So that's the amazing part about it, is that that's how life is, right? Coach B is one of the greatest men I've ever known, one of the greatest coaches I've ever known. And he didn't really coach for that long, but the journey he took us on changed a lot of lives, not just the guys that he was coaching. So that's how I look at those kind of things.
So now that you're older, you know, time has passed and you can really see things a little bit differently. What do you remember the most about him?
Well, I'm glad you put an ER on that word old. But I remember everything. I remember everything about him. And if you're asking what stands out, the reason I wrote the book Team of Destiny is because, and I'm not, this is not a shameless plug. I think a lot of people know the story, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper, right? Because I truly believe in journeys. You two guys, right? You're on this journey right now. And if I sit down with you, you can take me to when you struggled, right? To when you maybe found the love of your life, or what your parents went through. So journeys are so important. They're important educational tools. They're just important for our legacies. But I wanted to go back. I wanted to interview Pam Valvano Strasser now. I wanted to interview all the guys on my team because something happened before I ever met them that kind of serendipitously brought us together for that journey we've been talking about. So those are the stories that people love to hear. What was Ernie Meyer's life like before he came to NC State? Tom and DiNardo, people don't talk about Tommy a lot, and Walt Dinsmore. They were part of that team. They were just as important as my role. Their role was important to them, because I know whenever I had to go to practice, I had Tom and DiNardo beating up on me. He made me better. Even though he may have never seen a minute in a lot of the games, that's a story that's important for this whole piece. And Coach Valvano's story as well. You know, how he and Pam met and what he was like as a husband during that time, because he was we had him. Pam didn't have him that much during that journey. And so there were things that she didn't know that she found out through reading that book that he didn't talk about when he came home. So just having him as our coach, our friend, our brother, our mentor, that'll always be part of us. You know, that lives on in everything that he touched and everybody he touched.
So you talk about, stories, journeys. This team story is still talked about to this day. Like I said, it's brought up every single March. Why do you think it touched as many people as it did?
Well, because I think everyone can relate in some way, shape, or form. I believe that journey is kind of a microcosm, if you will, of what people are going through today, yesterday, during that time, in the future. Everybody goes through being overlooked or being an underdog, if you will, or being told they're not good enough and having to prove themselves to others, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's on a team. We go through those things. Everybody is similar in that way. Everybody has that, again, that pit moment in the journey. If you don't have pit moments, then you're not trying, right? You're not failing. And after that pit moment, if you're not trying to get out of it, then you're not searching, right? You're not asking the right questions to the right people. So I think everyone could relate to that story. You know, as a kid, we read Cinderella and what she went through and how she began and ended, but that's where the term comes from. You know, someone who basically came from nothing or unknown that has found a way to achieve something great. Go to the dance, you know, the slipper fits, right? It's not everybody gets to do that. And a lot of people, everybody wants to, right? There's some great stories out there, don't get me wrong. But that's what sports does, right? Those kind of stories and those individual successes come out of that. So it's not just talked about in March. Our story is taught by professors, taught by coaches to their teams. You know, kids who never even heard of us. Jimmy V is brought up, our team is brought up as an example of what other people can achieve in their lives, of their companies, whatever. It's relevant. It's always relevant, always will be.
So my last NC State question, what do you remember most about the fans and the students' reaction to during that whole run?
Oh, it's indescribable. Just the pictures in my mind that are real of Hillsborough Street being packed on our way out to the tournament, ACC and NCAA, how there were people waiting on the overpasses as the bus traveled underneath and just wishing us luck. People at the airport when we returned. I mean, it was, it's the stuff movies are made of. It's the stuff that as an athlete, you can only dream about, right? Because you're right in the thick of it. You're one of those guys on the team that is on that journey to do something great. And then to be welcomed home, welcomed back after such an amazing feat and journey. I remember it with clarity. And I still get fan mail, I get social media messages. As an old guy, I know I'm not saying that right, DMs or whatever you guys call them. I get them all the time, right? I get actual mail thanking us for that moment. It's crazy. I get mail from young people that say, listen, I wasn't born, I wasn't there, but I saw the documentary, or I Googled you, I saw something on YouTube, I'm a big fan, not just in this country either. I just mailed off a return note from a fan from France who was all into NCAA basketball. So it's amazing, man. It's just amazing to be a small part of something that turned out to be something amazingly great. But the fans are probably the most important part of that, because they got to live it as well. And just some of the stories that came out of the hope that we gave people back during that time, just incredible.
So, if my last question,
Carolina, you got any more questions?
Yeah, I got one more, one more. You talked how special Coach Valvano was, but if you had to describe him in one word, what would that be?
impossible. That's my word, dude. It's impossible to describe Coach B in one word, but if you're making me, I would have to say visionary. And that encompasses a lot when you can really look forward to something and believe it. When you can really walk into a room and say, I'm going to win a championship, and know it and believe it and make us believe it. Because there was no doubt he knew something. And whether that manifested something in all of us, that man believed it. He believed it. And if you read the book, Pam talks about how her husband would write on these sticky notes his achievements. And one of the sticky notes that she found was win a national championship. And so you knew he believed it. And so that takes an amazing visionary to not just picture it in your mind and think about it, but to believe that you can get there. And that's a special person.
So
do you guys have a copy of the book?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Do you have a copy of the book?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, no, I did
I'm
not.
going to send you a copy.
Okay.
You guys send me your addresses and I'll mail you. I'll sign and mail you a couple of copies.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Spencer, actually, our good friend Tanner Benton, he got the book. It came out this past year?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he got it, and he knew, obviously, how big a State fan I was. And I was like, yeah, you want to let me read that? He was like, no, I'm probably not. So, yeah, but I knew it was out there. I've been wanting to read it. But yeah, I'm going to try to wrap things up for you. And so to end things, I want to talk about life after basketball, because everybody knows the 83 story, all that stuff. But you've been involved with a lot of different things, past basketball. One of those being you work with youth basketball, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what prompted you to do that?
Because I was one of them once. Listen, I think, when I speak to organizations and youth, I always talk about really three important things that we all should try to remember and focus on. Our past, our purpose, and our potential. Our past, my mom used to get on my case when I came home after like a season of NBA, and she thought I was acting bigger than myself. She'd always put her hand on my chin and she said, son, don't you ever forget where you came from. And she'd be joking, but not really. She meant it. Where I grew up, the things I went through, those are all things that are important to me and keep me grounded. So your past should always be vital to you, and always remember the folks who helped you get to where you are. The purpose, which I think is what you're asking about, we're all trying to find it. Like we all have this platform. You have it, Spencer has it. You've got this platform that you can use for whatever you want. A lot of people use it for bad, for ill. But there's so many people using what they've created and what they have for good. And so that's how I was raised, right? I need to take what I've been given, what I have, what I've worked for, and see how I can turn it into some kind of service. So that's me finding my purpose. And I was a kid once, I needed help. So I have all this knowledge, I have things that are available to youth. And so that's why I have Utah United, my basketball program, that we develop kids, not just through basketball, but through life skills. And so that's close to my heart. So
another thing we mentioned there at the beginning that you've been involved with is you have sort of an artistic side, right? So how does a jock like yourself, an athlete, get involved in acting and being a singer-songwriter?
Well, those things actually came first.
Okay.
They were all part of my genesis as a person. I used to, my first introduction to music, and I might have to show you a picture of this, so because you probably won't know what it is, either one of you. I'm joking. I know you know what a record player is, but I had a close and play record player. I got my first couple of records. That kind of got me involved in wanting to be a musician. So I played a few instruments, a few brass instruments growing up. Then I started singing, and always wanted to make my own music. So as I had the means to do so, I'm now on my fifth album, as we call it today, but my fifth project. And so acting was something I did in grade school all the way to college. And, so I've been in a few Disney movies. And so these are things that I've always had interest in doing. And I always told myself, if I ever got the opportunity, I'm gonna try it. Even if I fail, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna try to do it and see what happens. And so those are things that have kind of been in a part of my life. I got them from my parents. I got them from wanting to do things as a kid, and they never left. And I try to get my kids to go out and try things as well.
And so, for the kids that are listening, people that are around our age that don't know, you were in The Luck of the Irish, Disney Channel original movie. And we talked about this earlier, Spencer and I, watched it so many times and never had a clue that was you in it. So for those listening, if you go back and watch it, I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. Go see if you can pick out Thurl Bailey in The Luck of the Irish.
Oh, it won't be hard for sure.
That's on my to-do list for tonight. I'm gonna go get some dinner and watch Luck of the Irish so I can find you in it.
All right, you'll find me right away.
All right, so my last question is what does the future hold for Thurl Bailey? Where do we go from here?
Well, I've been a TV analyst for the Utah Jazz for the past 23 years. Almost an empty nester. I think at this point I want to be, my wife Cindy and I, to be living our best lives. But I still want to use my strengths, right? So that's why I'm doing a lot of coaching right now, not just basketball with the youth, but coaching to individuals, to corporate teams. I'm helping individuals find their story and their journey and use that in whatever field that they're in. Use it to make a living, use it to create a legacy, use it to teach others. There's so many people out there, from coaches to former athletes to practitioners to, whether you're a chiropractor or a doctor, you've got a story. And I try to help people draw that out by taking them through a process. And so I get to get up in front of a lot of corporate people and teams that are trying to cut the nets down themselves, so to speak, in their companies. How do you do that? Well, it starts with great leadership, right? And I know about that because I had some of the greatest leaders you could ever have, not just in basketball, but in other parts of my life. So my corporate speaking, keynotes, and seminars are things that I'm really enthralled in. With the book out now, I'm an author. I don't know if I'm an expert on everything, but I'm an expert on some things that I feel like I could be a great help out there to a lot of people, individuals, and companies that might be struggling in some of those areas.
Awesome. Spence, I think we've had another great one today, don't you?
I think so.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Thurl, we're very, very appreciative of you coming on, giving us your time and your insight. I know you have to talk about these kind of things a lot, so we're glad you did it one more time. You'll probably have to talk about it tomorrow. So.
Well, I love it. I enjoy it, and I'm proud of you guys for what you're doing with your platform. I think more people need to get out there and let their voices be heard, and just bring some good news, right? And you guys are doing a great job at that. So I'm honored. Thanks for having me on, and I'll keep following you.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. Well, as always, we want to ask you to connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Somehow We Manage. We are so appreciative of those who do listen. And if you like what you heard today, please share with your friends. So for the 10th edition, this has been Caegan Jackson and
Spencer Hargrove.
thank you for listening.